All right, awesome. Welcome to the first meeting of the Investor Club here at Cal Humboldt. Previously known as HCU. Let's get into it. All right. So this is going to be going over the stuff that is on this piece of paper, both sides. I'm also going to be showing you a little bit else to give you some context for what it's talking about. Looking at a little bit of charts. It's not going to be too complicated. It's going to be pretty easy, straightforward stuff. So there's a loan called an FHA loan. This is the Federal Housing Administration. That's who it comes from. It's one of the better loans out there, not just really kind of the best loan. So there's two main parts to talk about when we talk about loans in general for house loans, right? There's the down payment and then there's the APR. In general cases, I would want to put it like this. Your down payment, right? You want that to be as low as possible, right? Just as possible. The reason why is because when you immediately put out money down there, right? That, to be able to get the property, that takes away from your opportunity, your possibility to use the money that you could have otherwise used, right? To be able to put it somewhere else, to be able to use that, right? The thing that you're interested in primarily is to be able to own the place, just to be able to have the house. Because what happens is as soon as you have it, right, then you start renting it out, right? That's what you want. See, this is one of the bigger things, the roadblocks for people when they try to get houses is, well, yeah, but it costs a lot. And they do, too. It depends on like what sort of property you're looking at, but they can definitely cost a lot. The down payment and the closing costs are the overwhelming significant costs to getting a house. We want those things to be gone as much as possible, and this is how that works. So there's an organization out there called the Chenoa Fund. There's a multitude of these sorts of things, but they are government sponsored, and what they do is they will put down money for you for free, that so long as you make your mortgage payments on time for 36 months, that they will clear out the debt, that you won't own anything anymore. They go up to 3.5%. That's what they do. The FHA loan is exactly 3.5%. It's also, again, one of the better loans out there. You can get up to 2 of them. That's really, really important. My mother's a real estate agent. I've also talked to loan officers. What happens after about like the second house is now your down payments are skyrocketed, like way, way up there, right? There's another hack for that though. It's called a DSCR loan. We'll get into that in a minute. So that's kind of really the point. You have your down payment, and then you have your closing costs, right? Closing costs. These things, a few $1,000s, anywhere from like 3 to 6 around the country, really kind of depends on what you're looking at. But I don't know, so this is just to get context and know what we're talking about here. This is the overwhelming cost that it takes to get a house. Now, outside of these things, you have extraneous different costs. That's actually, I can pull up a little bit of it, and I'll pull more from it as well. Some general terms as we go on. The costs outside of them, in California, and this is important to note because we live in an expensive state, what happens is that you've got about $1,200, which is quite a serious difference. $1,200 made up of things like a flood determination fee, a deed preparation fee, an environmental protection fee, recording deed fee. There's a bunch of little things. They add up to about $1,200. Point is, though, is that you can look at the Chenoa Fund. This is going to be for your down payment. That's the Chenoa Fund. And then your closing costs. You want the community seconds there. You guys know what I'm talking about here. Community seconds.
Wait.
The community, what?
No, I don't know what you're talking about. Wait, what is community seconds?
Yes, both the community seconds and also the Chenoa Fund are government sponsored. They're government sponsored programs. They're kind of like Fannie Mae, wherein there's this blurring of lines between private and public. You know, the government sponsored, that sort of thing. The community seconds, there's actually kind of a little more about this too. It's kind of cool actually. What they can do.
Number 2.
No, seconds isn't time.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah. What they can also help with is like renovation fees, those sorts of costs. They provide a little more, but those are those big things that stand out about it. That's what I would say. So the point is that there's a lot of really good opportunity, and these are just two of the ones that like kind of really stand out, right? Like if they can cover, you know, the significant cost to buy a house, right? Then that's pretty cool. There's a lot of different programs out there. There's a lot. Because it also depends on where you are, what you're trying to like, where you're trying to buy a house at, right? There's different programs there for that location. So it gets even better. This is a bedrock here. This gets better, right? Yeah, what's up?
Who's most helpful to talk to about this stuff, an MLO or a real estate agent in your experience that you talked to both?
Sorry, real estate agent or who?
Or an MLO,
MLO?
like mortgage loan originator.
Oh.
Originators.
You're talking just like a loan officer?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Who's more helpful, the real estate agent or your loan officer?
Depends on what you're talking about.
Like to just figure out how to like.
This
find
stuff, the loan officer. Loan officer, yeah. They're the ones who manage the loans, right? The loan situation, getting help with loans, all that sort of jazz. That's what they cover. Real estate agents just like get help with, you know, getting the actual like what properties are there out there, right? And what are you trying to do, right? Well, you want to speak to a rental property real estate agent. Those are the ones that are gonna be able to help you the best with that, what you're trying to do, which is house hacking, rent that shit out so you can get some moolah. That is what they're about. Instead of just like, oh, it's like your dream home and stuff like that. It's like, no. No, I'm trying to make money here, please. Anyways, all weird about it. Okay. Let's talk about the DSCR loans. There's another part about this, right? So the DSCR loan, DSCR, this is an abbreviation. It stands for service coverage ratio, debt service coverage ratio. Oh God, I can't even speak. Debt service coverage ratio. What this is about is they look at the property that you're looking at and they say, okay, how much money could you get from this stuff? And it's like 1.3, 1.25 times, something like that, around that range. It's not like too extreme in terms of like what is your like mortgage, right? Not conventional, so to speak, because we're doing the sort of different loans here, right? But it's effectively just simply your mortgage. Versus like how much money can the property bring in if you're renting it out, that sort of thing. Let me just look up really quickly. Okay, well, yeah, I guess I was right. Yeah, 1.25. Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, anyways. And that can vary too. And then this is sort of the other part about all this too. You want to shop around. You want to make sure that you're looking around the country, right? And we'll get into a little bit more about that in terms of like particular places. If you want to look at like a really good, I suppose, like sort of hack in all of this is you can research online and say like what are the like the highest, you know, growth, you know, cities, right, and states and areas, just in general terms. And those sorts of areas is probably what you would be wanting to look to, just so that like you know that not only the property in value is going to be going up, which then you can use HELOCs, we'll get into that in a second, but then also like the rent prices as well. But keep in mind as well, like just what can I get like right now? So to put sort of like a hypothetical on it, if you're looking at like, oh, like this city over here seems to be like more growth potentiated, but then like right now, I like would have to like, if I went with this, though, I would have to sacrifice a little bit in the rent, like in terms of like, well, yeah, but if I went over here, it's like not gonna be as like high growth, right? Less growth, more rent immediately, higher growth, less rent immediately, right? That is a situation because there's obviously like intricacies in that, how that plays out, but we can give perspective on this. So there's sort of like resources you look to and be like, okay, in my calculations that I can like look to and sort of like speculate about a little bit, and that's sort of like, you know, if you're talking about like, about like how much is that growth gonna be, you can look at like history, you can talk to like the real estate agents in the area and be like, how much have the prices of the homes gone up? You can ask about like the rent prices as well to those people who would know about those sort of things. You can talk to like local landlords and you can just ask them and just like connect with other people in that area. There are so many people out there with so many different perspectives and knowledge areas that you don't have immediate connection to that you can go to and make connections with, right? Just don't be a dick about it. You know what I mean? Because sometimes that can happen though. Like, you know, I remember my mom telling me the story about our neighbors one time when we were living over North Kakalaki and North Carolina, for those who don't know. And she was like, oh yeah, the neighbors came over one day. I was like, oh, how much did you sell your house for? Like that was kind of like the immediate like question, so to speak. And she was just like, I mean, I don't know. Like you can just check like the public details, you know what I mean? You know, that sort of thing. Like just sort of like a note on that, right? The immediate sort of like, but what can I get from you sort of thing? That gets like a little sort of like meta like that. It's sort of like weird, like you're just sort of objectifying people. General terms here, philosophy major, by the way, just don't do that. You know what I mean? Like try to be like genuine with people, you know what I mean? And be straight up and honest. Try to say that you want help, that sort of thing. Because it is true. So the DSCR loan, quick note about that. I'll erase this. Trails here. Okay. All right, cool. Okay, so 15% down. Now, what this happens to mean is that your interest rate for your mortgage is going to be a little higher, but that's okay. All right, this is sort of the point. The reason why you want this instead of like the 20%, which is actually pretty usual for like another property that's like, oh yeah, this is gonna be like an investment sort of thing, where you just go to like the conventional mortgage sort of thing, which is like highway robbery, unfortunately, but it's like what people do. Generally speaking, it's like, oh, like 5 to 7%. It's like you can get 3.5% down, you get 2 of these things, and it's like, what are those things? We're not being taught financial literacy. Anyways, there's really good reason why you want to go with that one, not that one. It has to do with the availability for investment otherwise, right? You can do, I mean, again, sort of talking about like the particularities, but you can look at the sort of calculations like this. If you set up like this mortgage, I mean, like I've already done the math on this, so it's gonna basically come to this. But if you look at like the mortgage and you're like, okay, well, if I went with this thing, I just gave out this money right now, and it's like, okay, it would save me for the interest payments, right, the monthly mortgage, right, or just, you know, yearly, because you can calculate it like that. Just add it up, simple math. Okay, I would save myself like this amount of money if I gave them another 5% for the property value. I don't want to do that because I'd much rather go here and then utilize other investment options out there, because those things will make me more money than what I'm paying for the interest if I went, you know, like with this. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Pretty clear there? Okay. Let me know if things are like opaque on my end. I'll be sure to clear that sort of thing up. Point is that you make more money by using the money to invest otherwise, instead of just like, oh, I'm going to save myself on interest by doing that. Like, don't do that. Bad. All right. Now the thing about the DSCR doll. Now, what I was saying earlier about like the sort of strategy, and we'll be going over this exactly what this kind of like looks like. I would plot something else, but I just want to go over like terms pretty quickly here. So the other thing here to note, something called a HELOC. How about what a HELOC is, okay? A HELOC is a home equity line of credit. What HELOC is. Now what the HELOC means is this. Your property accrues value over time. That's what happens, that's what properties do. In fact, actually, they accrue value 3.5 to 8% a year. That's from my real estate mother as well as my own research. That is the average across the nation. Now, the HELOCs operate, seemingly, generally, from the research that I have done, and of course, again, shop around, you might be able to find something better. They will do 80% of the available equity of your home. So, let's say this, right? Your home value goes from 100K to 200,000, okay? And now, of course, during this time, like you've been, you know, paying off the principal amount, which is the actual like loan amount. So let's just say, just hypothetically, for the sake of like easy math here, right? You have no money, and it's just like, just give me the house, and they're just like, sure. So now you have $100,000 worth of principal that you owe, right? During this time, obviously, you're gonna be paying this off, but for the simplicity of math, though, let's just exclude that right now. So let's just say that it goes up to $200,000, and now you have $100,000 worth of equity in the house. Now they go up to 80%. What that means that you're actually able to pull out $80,000 worth of money through the HELOC. The HELOC costs you about $50. This was from a loan officer that I spoke to. Again, you might be able to find better from this. This is sort of the point. This is the bedrock. This is the bedrock. This is what's happening right now. This is what's real. but again, you can find better. So they'll give you a second mortgage, so to speak. That's sort of like how that works for the $80,000. Now the mortgage, the rate on that is, I believe, like 5% or something like that. It's about the same, which might sound like kind of like a lot, but the point about this though is, okay, what am I doing with $80,000? What other investment options are there out there? The S&P 500 in the last few decades, and you can consider about the situations about bubbles and how you want to go about that situation in terms of like, well, it was like way up here. So we have like two main bubbles that we can look to in the past. In fact, actually, I'll just sort of point you over to here, what this looks like. So let's go with like years. No, is that like, yeah, 5 quarters? No, it's not even private. Okay, let's just go down 2 months. This is the okay. Actually, you know what? No, I'll do better like this. I want to do this one. Okay. So the two last bubbles that happened, let's make sure that people can see that from home. Two last bubbles, excuse me, were called the dot-com bubble that happened in the year 2000, thereabouts. And then the last one was the Great Financial Crisis, about 07. If you look at these sorts of situations, and there's ways that we can go about this in terms of like, for home prices, the Great Financial Crisis, you'd be kind of wanting to look at this one. It's about, this is the home-centered sort of aspect to it. That's where it was. You can look at these resources, point is, you can look at these resources and see, hey, wait a second, there's something wrong. Take notice, of course, what's going on over here, right? There's something wrong going on. We've seen this before. It's happened time and time and time again through our history. And what has happened is that unfortunately a lot of people who are like laymen get stuck up at the top because they aren't fully aware about what's going on. So I'll give you a quick example, okay? How many people, raise your hand if you've heard of NFTs? Yeah? NFTs? Cool. You don't, Casey, fantastic. Okay, let me explain them really quickly. They're called non-fungible tokens. All right, what that effectively means is that it's linked up with like the blockchain technology that like Bitcoin uses, and so it's like, it's a really unique thing. It's like a one of a kind. You know what I've seen? I've seen 13-year-olds become millionaires off of the face of a whale, right? Of a monkey. It's like, here's this little bit, right? And it's like, por qué? What, like, please tell me, what is the artistic value of that? They become millionaires. It's a little strange, isn't it? It's weird. There's this new technology, it's very fancy, everything's very excitable about it. It's happening at the same time this is. That is not a coincidence. It is not a coincidence. On top of that, people can buy their own shit, bid up the prices of it, and then sell it to other people. This is literally called a pyramid scheme. What a pyramid scheme is when you have someone at the top, right, and they're starting shit, and they get other people involved, and they say, hey, if you also contribute to like the downpour of how we're gonna like, you know, sell this off to other people, you can make money. And so the people below them, they get really tied up into it, and everyone else below them gets really tied up into it, but they're selling to other people. And so effectively what happens is that millionaire, that 13-year-old millionaire, right, where do you think their money is? Well, it's in NFTs, duh. And what happens at the end of the day is a flash crash happens, extreme volatility. You think the stock market is volatile, right? You have seen nothing yet, nothing. It will be a lot like 1929, and it will crash very fast, because that's how those things go. These, of course, the people who are very rich and in power and in know do not want to get trapped up at the top. They want everyone else there. That's how money functions. Unfortunately, that's society. Let's try to move on to something else, though. So let's see here. We're talking about HELOCs, huh? 80% of the loan value, you get $80,000 from $100,000, and about an interest rate of about 5%. This was sort of the point that I was bringing up, is that the stock market in the last few decades has brought up, yeah, thank you.
No worries. Here
Thanks,
we go.
man. Jason, right?
Jason.
Justin? Jason?
Just call me JJ.
Thanks, man. So the point about this is that over the last few decades, the stock market has averaged about like 7% per year. So this is sort of the point. is that if you can find a reliable investment that can beat the interest rate for this, and that's not hard to do, right? You will be making money. This is what the rich do. They pull out a lot of loans and debt, and they use those loans and debt to make even more money, beating the interest rates of those things before, right? That's what they do. That's how they do it. You can do the same. That's sort of the point. And I'm going to show you something later that is going to blow your fucking mind. Okay? Properties like with DSCR loans and getting the right sort of property as well. I'm trying to think, there's like so much math. You guys have no idea how much math I've been doing. We can draw out the math, and I can show you at least for like the first year what you can like look towards. And this is like without like even the HELOCs involved or anything like that. We'll get into that in a minute though. I want to go over some stuff really quickly before that. Right, there are grants for closing costs and down payments and other such items, right? So if you want to, and we'll get into exactly how this functions later with like DSCR loans, but point is that there's grants that you can take advantage of. And on top of that, they don't even like necessarily know that, oh, like the Chenoa Fund is like helping me out. But let me apply for like this grant and see if they give me money anyways. You know what I mean? Little like scurvy around the curvy round, you know what I mean? Anyways. But yeah, and then there's other grants as well. Because again, you have those, $1,200 to cover yourself anyways. And house hacking. There's a few methods for house hacking, but let's try to just put it in simple terms and pretty straightforwardly. If you have a house with, ideally, we're going to be talking about a quadplex with 4 rooms, you can rent out each one of those rooms, and then you can have set up a situation for yourself in the living room where you set up dividers. This is sort of like the more like extreme route if you want to take it like that, right? But hey, we're young, we're flexible like that. I remember my dad saying this once. We were driving down like this road. I don't even know where the fuck we were, but anyways, random ass memory. We're driving down this road, and he looks to like these like nice apartments, and he was like, you know what that makes me remind me of? Like when I was like my age, right? When he was like my age, he said this. It was like when I was your age, Jacob. I looked at those things, I would be like, I am blessed and God right now, living in those places. And then he thinks like, but like at this age though, I'd probably shoot myself. I wouldn't want to be there. Which is sort of the point about this, is that people in general our age, right, we are more comfortable, right? I mean, we just got out of living with our parents sort of thing. So the point I want to take this is like, hack your psychology. Hack your own psychology, and there's a lot of conversation we can have about that one. But the point about this is that stretch what you can be comfortable with so that you can set yourself up later really, really well. Like, it's okay. Just take a couple of years. That's the point. We're going to get into the length of this sort of stuff, and it is not nearly as long as you would think it would be. And it would mean a lot later on. This is the point about being frugal. This is delayed gratification. We know that there are some really significant realities to that and embracing that and then being aware of it, what it pays off to be. Okay. That would be, and again, there's like other strategies, but as far as like just in a nutshell, the best sort of thing, that would probably be like one of the better perspectives you can have. So let's get into the other part about this where I say $2,400 could give $29,000 a year. So remember how I said earlier that you can have your, Chenoa Fund, cover all that jazz, set community seconds, you have $1,200 left over, okay? Here's how the math actually works out. Erase this a bit.
Really quick, what's your chances if you apply for those grants? Like, what do you know what the dispersal rate of it is? Like, how likely you are to actually get approved?
Pretty likely.
Really?
Yeah, what they do is they base it off of like, well, how much money do you have? How wealthy are you? And they see like, well, what is your need for that sort of thing? Again, this is government sponsored. Mm-hmm. As accessible as the FHA loan is itself, these organizations presumably that they have the funds. Indeed, they do, because how many people fucking know about it? You would not have a problem. And again, it's like worst case scenario, which is unlikely. Worst case scenario that like you couldn't get approved by them. There's so many others that are out there as well. These are just like 2 to speak of. They are exemplars, we would say, right? That sort of thing.
I listen to a lot of stuff about this, like MLO podcasts, even when it's are specifically about how to finance houses in a bunch of different ways. I've never heard about the funds and stuff like that before at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Like even like the industry experts. I mean, this guy's over in Florida, so maybe these are California programs, but because FHA wouldn't be.
Yeah, no, the FHA isn't. Community Seconds is something that's countrywide. The Chenoa Fund, it has to do with like Native Americans,
Oh, really?
but we have access to it.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's kind of funny like that. But I believe it's also going to be countrywide. So yeah, it's just something to be aware of though. But yeah, they don't want us to know this sort of stuff for good reasons because we would take it away their own opportunities. So here's sort of the point about this. $1,200. Let's just focus on like one property right now, okay? For simple math. Again, you can just like double this sort of thing. Really quickly, how much are you guys paying for rent? Is it above $700? Raise your hand if it's above $700. Is it above $600? Above $500?
Truck. Zero. No.
You guys don't pay rent?
No.
Really? What's your situation? I'm curious.
I live in my truck.
Okay, fair enough. That's fair. Okay, totally fine. When you were paying rent, how much were you paying? If you've ever paid rent, have you ever paid rent?
Paying like 900.
900?
Yeah, I paid $300 a month, and then I paid like basically $400 a month, but that was like 10 years ago.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
inflation
8 years
from now.
ago.
Yeah. Were you in California when you were paying that?
Yeah, so like, I was on a pot farm, so like I was
Okay.
renting a house and like from my boss. Like that's a lot of the thing is like I've been out in the hills just living rent free and working there.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, no, I get that. Okay, Casey, do you pay rent?
I pay $250 per person. My landlord, as you know, my brother, just put it down to $250.
Right, yeah.
Because he wanted me to pay all the electrical, utility, the gas, and I was like, that's not what we discussed here. That's not in the lease. Like, we gotta have a sit down. He's like, okay, $250 flat, and I was like, fine, I'm fine with that. Normally, though, if I was just doing this by myself, it'd be $1,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not very far off. Point is, though, is that there are opportunities you guys are taking advantage of that right now. There's more. There's more opportunities, right? I'm paying myself right now. I'm paying nothing. I'm not even paying utilities or anything like that. It's part of a home share program. I'm taking care of this guy who's Parkinson's, that sort of thing. But yeah, so good stuff. Point is, though, $700 above that. What did
I
you
pay $1,000 for a one bedroom here.
Yeah.
It's gonna go up. It's going up. They're already telling me they're jacking it 25% next year, so it's gonna be up to like $1,250 next year.
no, somebody offered an apartment type unit where I'm like, what does that mean? For $2,600 a month in Eureka. Like I've been looking for places. I'm like, what is there like a private spa?
People
Like,
are getting
do I have a
gouged.
hot tub?
People are getting gouged.
Yeah, it's
badly.
insane. Like
This is where it gets very significant.
That's why I've considered buying like even just a fucking like a trailer or
Yeah.
something next year instead. Because
Yeah.
I found a couple of those below 100,000, so I'm like, shit, maybe. But
Yeah,
maybe I'll do this instead.
I got
yeah.
10 grand in the savings right now, and I've just been looking for an apartment that's either 800 and 880, but then there's gross requirements, like you have to have 3 times the amount of income for this apartment. And that's also something that most students can't meet.
Yeah, yeah. And there are not requirements like that for an FHA loan.
Okay.
There aren't. You need like a good credit score, and that's effectively it. In fact, actually, fun fact, they will count your experience as being a student as work experience. They do not need you to be making money. Like there's not like a money limit involved. It's just like, well, where are you working? I'm a student. Fantastic. 2 years, bang, you're good. So I want to do a quick mathematical sort of analysis right now. Trying to think about, probably want to go 5 years here. Yeah. Yeah, I suppose I will. Okay. Or maybe 1. We can get into the 5 years later. There's a reason why I'm picking 5 years. There's a reason for that. But well, let's just do 1 year. So I went with $700 because I've seen 800, 900, 1,000 and shit like that. But let's go on the low end. Let's just go on the low end right now, right? Just be conservative about it. It gets worse. This is the point. $700. Yeah. $700 is $8,400 in 1 year. Okay, $8,400. Now, let's look at the opportunities with an FHA home, right? You have to spend $1,200 flat one time, okay? And we're going with something of, this is why the 5 years kind of comes in. But let me be a little more honest with you guys. It's not quite going to be $185,000 like I say in the card. It's going to be more like $265,000, right? We're looking at, if we go back to the real home prices here, we'll get into that in a second. I'll get into that when I go into the 5 years. So if you rent out each home, and you can do this, again, look around the country, be open to moving, be open to change, be open to taking advantage of those opportunities. Places like the East Coast, pretty good opportunities down there. Not so much like looking like around like the middle-ish area to like kind of like south, but yeah, like maybe like Florida would be like that south, but then like not like Louisiana sort of thing. You know what I mean? Not like Mississippi. Sort of like skip that area. It's a little too cheap. But anyway, from like South Carolina to like Rhode Island, sort of thing. In that range, and a little bit like there's opportunities is what I'm trying to point to, and then also like Texas, and maybe like Nevada too. Kind of depends. Anyway, so let's get into the opportunities here. So you're making $2,400 a month renting out a quadplex. A quadplex is a particular house with 4 individual dwelling units. That's what a quadplex is about. And you can, fun fact, get up to from 1 to 4, right, with an FHA loan, right, up to 4 dwelling units. You want to max out your potential there. Max it. Maximize. That's what it's all about. The principle of maximization. All right. So your mortgage, however, right now for a place for $265,000, about $1,600. Whoops. $1,600. What that leaves you with is $800 a month. You are making $800 a month. Guess what though? You're not paying rent. Your mortgage is being covered here. You know what that means? That means $700 a month now all of a sudden becomes $1,500. You're not paying that anymore. It was $1,500 a month. What that is, times 12, is $18,000. Made $18,000. You're not making that. You're not making that. This is sort of the point. You've saved yourself $8,000. So what that becomes is that a little less than $10,000, basically. You made $10,000. This is where the retirement part comes in. Retirement. It's like trying to get the dust on, just like made it worse. That's where that comes in. There's more perspective to give, and this is where the 5-year sort of comes in. But that's sort of the point. You are no longer burning money with rent. Rent, burn. That's what that equals. Renting equals burning money. It is burning. There is no investment there. You will make nothing out of it other than just simply, oh, I have a roof. Guess what, though? You burned money to be able to do that. So don't do it. Don't do it. Instead, make money. Okay, yeah, we'll get into that afterwards. All right, so we'll get into the next part of this. This is where this requires. Okay. So let me talk about like what this is. Let me give it a little bit of ethos for this sort of stuff. Case-Shiller. Shiller is a university professor from Yale, and then Case was a Nobel Laureate in mathematics. Point is, these fuckers are smart. There it is. Okay, cool. All right. This is based on the housing market. We can see there's a housing bubble. It was massive as balls. A lot of people made a lot of money, and then a whole fuck ton more lost a lot of money during this process. This is what bubbles are. It's the robbery from the poor. But you can be aware, knowledge is power. The truth shall set you free, and indeed from poverty itself, at the least. That's what it can do. You just need to embrace it. So, the point about this is, let me put this into a nutshell. This is the home index, the prices of the homes, divided by CPI, which is the consumer price index inflation. It's inflation. That's what that means. Does anyone know what's going on with inflation right now? Anyone? Yeah? Forrest.
It's just going sky high.
It's going sky high.
I was looking at used cars, and the guy, because my car broke down, so I was thinking of trading it in, and the guy wanted like 10 grand for an 05 Acura, like Sentra or something like that, somebody just like completely downgrade from what I've got. And then he was saying that in Eureka, they haven't even bothered to change the tags on the cars. They're just telling people add 5,000 to the price when you're walking around. That's our market adjustment, is what they're calling it. So it's like, it's insane.
Yeah. Again, the people are getting gouged here. Billionaires are not touched by that shit. They don't even have fucking cars. They have jets, and then they have fucking yachts. That's what they got. We have cars, we're getting gouged. Rent, again, we're getting gouged. It's a reality here, it's a theme here. But this is the point, though. I want you to be angry. I want you to be furious, okay? Because when you are, that translates to motivation to do something about it. That's what that means. Seize that shit. Carpe diem. There's something very important to know about this, though. If they are the home prices divided by, the denominator there is the inflation, you know what that means for the home prices? If we're up here, and that was the great financial crisis, huge-ass motherfucking bubble for the real estate market, do you know what that really means for us? It means we're higher. It means we're higher than that. Because the inflation rate is higher than what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be like 2.5%. We're doing 7, right? We're worse off than what this thing even shows us.